Another question I've gotten from several people is how did it impact me and how did we account for the practical nature of me no longer having my income? Being a relatively high earner and having that disappear, always being used to having my own money and used to, every 2 weeks having that salary hit the bank account, what that adjustment was like for us. This is something where I really try to give people the advice that if you are married, it is our money, not yours and mine or mine and yours. It is all one big bucket. And if you aren't thinking about it in that way right now, I would really encourage you to consider it. Of course, we talk now far more about money and our spending than we did before. Partially out of necessity. Of course, we have less. We've got less to play with. Oh my gosh, when we had both of our incomes, we are frugal by nature. So we don't make big, extravagant, purchases on a whim or anything like that. But we knew we had enough coming in. So we had zero or very little visibility into spending. Or we could go get what we needed to if the boys needed something or signing up for camps or whatever it was. Now, like I'm kind of like a hawk looking at what we're spending. And and then I am now, my husband keeps telling me to stop this, and I know I've got to quit. But like I don't get my nails done anymore. And my hair, I've got like grays coming in. I'm natural hair color. So like I am also I've scaled back on like what I was doing and spending, mostly just for my own inner peace cuz my husband's like, "Can I just make you an appointment if you want?" No. Um so there's that. I sold my designer purses to start this. I was like, "You know what? Nope, I'm getting rid of those. Who needs those anyway?" And that's partially like what I'm using for the editing for my podcast. So adjusting from that was my own thing. It was my own like me realizing, oh my gosh, I don't have this money coming into our account anymore. I need to, you know, I need to save what I can and bring in what I can. And all the while, my husband's sitting here like, Caitlin, stop it. Stop it. That's just me. I'm not perfect. But the shift though to what he brings in and what we bring in from our rental properties, it's our money. So we've always looked at it in that way. And it's not as though I walk into his office and ask him for permission to go, you know, spend a couple $100s on something that we need. However, I do usually tell him for awareness just to say, "Hey, we need XYZ. I just wanted to let you know." So we talk about money a lot more. So I actually feel like it's been a very positive thing for us. I don't have an allowance, that's people have asked me that, does your husband give you an allowance? And no. But our finances, it's all combined and we communicate very, very openly about it. That has been the biggest shift, to tell you the truth. He brings in the money and then I manage it. So whether that's like paying bills or making sure we have enough in this account because auto pay draws from that place and, all of that good stuff. We're talking about money more and we are spending it wisely together, watching our budget. Generally me, and I raise up flags for him about anything that we need to talk about. And it's really worked pretty darn well for us, and it's brought us closer as a couple. When you sit down to look at your budget with your spouse, just remember, it is a living, fluid, breathing thing. It's the decisions that you guys make based on your financial position right now. You have options on how much you want to save. Do you actually want to dig into your savings a bit or dig into your investments a little bit? Is it worth it to you to take a step back from work and spend that time with your kids? What are you then saving on caregiving costs? There's two sides of that ledger. And there is also the emotional and opportunity cost as well. So, of course, you have to figure out the practical considerations and the reality of what your financial circumstances look like. Just remember that nothing's permanent. So if you decide perhaps that taking 1 year off is best for you. You can then figure out over the course of that year what then you plan to step back into. And you could step back into something completely different. It could pay you more or it could pay you less than whatever you had before, but you might not have all those answers right now. So, as long as you and your husband can create a plan where you both feel comfortable enough based on your risk tolerance to you taking a step back for even a period of time, the thing that was kind of scary to us as we were going through it was, well, I mean, for how long will this work? We drastically reduced the amount of money that we were saving and investing. Like this was an act of faith for us to do this because I cannot not bring in anything into perpetuity just based on where we are, right now in January 2026. It is a little bit of an act of faith. You have your income information as of today. I would go through that exercise and create different iterations of what a plan or a transition plan could potentially look like, whether you take off 3 months or 6 months. At your employer, and depending on state law, depending on where you reside, you can typically take some kind of unpaid leave in return to your job. Now, there's limitations on that. So again, you've got to check what your company's HR policy is. You've got to check on, state laws and what your rights are. See, like, for how long can we go with me not bringing in any money or me bringing in 25% of what I did before, or 50 or 80. So model out what those different scenarios could be. And just know that on the other side of that break or that downshift or whatever it happens to be, you do not have to step right back into the same thing that you were doing before. If you love it, of course, it absolutely can be. But if you want to explore other things or use this as a chance to pivot careers, I know several of my friends have chosen to do something different on the other side of taking time to be fully with their kids or working 2 days a week, pivoting to something else. So there's no shortage of examples of that. So figure out what your risk tolerance is between you and your husband. Sit down and be really, really honest with each other on what you're willing to give up. And my answer, I said, I'd sell everything and go live in an Airstream on my land in rural Texas if we need to. Use that through the lens of what am I willing to give up? At what cost outside of the finances? What is this costing us as a couple right now? What is this costing me as a person to, give up this time spent with my kids if that's where you're being called to be? As part of this exercise, a very practical tool. So I've been working to build a budgeting worksheet for you and your husband to leverage as you're thinking about either downshifting or stepping out of the workforce completely and modeling out different scenarios for what that could look like. Used all of my very best management consulting principles on putting this thing together. I was asked to build something like this, or if I had any really, really great resources for this. So I've worked really hard on it. I really hope that you do find it valuable. You can go download the resource at the Mother Wife Pod on Substack.